Welcome to the Knutsford Great Race and the wonderful world of the high wheeler, or more commonly called the penny farthing. Now, if I can just get up this wonderful machine, I'll tell you a bit more about it. The Knutsford Great Race is a charity event that's held every 10 years. This year it's in aid of ShelterBOX, a charity that helps people who've been made homeless by man-made or natural disasters. So, come with me, we'll find somewhere a bit more quiet and I'll tell you all about old bikes. Now, as you probably know, the penny farthing was an early form of bicycle, but there were two earlier forms, the velocipede and the hobby horse. We've got three races here today, one for the hobby horse, one for the velocipede, and the main 3-hour event for the high wheeler. So, let me tell you something about the hobby horse, with the aid of some archive footage taken 10 years ago. We've come to nearby Tabley Hall, which used to be the home of Lord Leicester. Peter Startup, who used to be the curator at Tabley Hall, is riding Lord Leicester's hobby horse, which was built in the early 1800s. As you can see, it's a sort of walking come running machine. You need a smooth action with a kind of kick at the end, and it takes a while to get the hang of it. Now, these machines were toys for the rich. They were current among the circle of friends of George IV, who was the Prince Regent at the time. Lord Leicester was one of those friends, and he had two of these machines, one in London and one here in Knutsford. This is a quality machine. Everything was built to the highest standards. The machines were so expensive, only the very rich could afford them. Everything was built for comfort. That red leather cushion behind the handlebars is an armrest. And it goes without saying, the red leather saddle is adjustable. Thank you, Peter. Very nicely done. And now it's time to go to the starter and the hobby horse race. First away are the two riders from Germany, Michael Grutzner in the orange hoops and Sascha Kolzwasser with the mustachio. From Canada is Glenn Norcliffe in the yellow helmet, and the English country gentleman is cycling historian Nick Clayton. We've caught them here at the halfway stage. The young bloods, Michael Grutzner and Sascha Kolzwasser, are well in front with their brightly painted running machines. Enthusiasts Glenn and Nick, the cycling historians, are riding more conventional machines. First over the finishing line by 50 bicycle lengths is Michael Grutzner. And clearly enjoying the race in second place is Sascha Kolzwasser. Glenn Norcliffe from Canada is battling to the finish line. And Nick Clayton, still recovering from hosting last night's reception for the riders, has made it to the end. Well done, Nick. Needless to say, it didn't catch on. When all's said and done, it was really just a man astraddle a beam, the wheel at each end, scooting along. On the flat, could do about 9 miles an hour, and downhill, could even keep up with a horse. However, could they invent a machine where the rider's feet were completely off the ground? At the time, they thought it was impossible because the rider had to keep the machine upright and in motion at the same time. But 40 years later, they did the impossible and invented the velocipede. It's not so different from our modern bike, except that it's propelled by pedals attached to the front wheel. Oh yes, one other difference. They were so uncomfortable to ride, they called them bone shakers. Here's J Wildin talking to someone who likes to ride one, John Malseed.
John, 10 years ago you became world champion in the bone shaker race. Are you hoping to retain that title today?
I certainly am. Although I'm 10 years older, I would still like to have a good go at it. The bike is still in good shape and I think I'm up to it. The only problem is it was I think a couple of 100-yard dash last time, but this time it's a complete circuit. But I think I can manage it okay. I've been round and I can manage the circuit and the corners okay.
Without any more ado, let's join the bone shaker race. They're off and they're coming down both sides of the island. Scott Brown is first past the island on our left. John Malseed is out of sight on the right. Because it's the only bone shaker race in the world, then the winner is the world champion, obviously. That's John Malseed, the reigning world champion, shadowing Scott Brown and waiting to make his move. Peter Cox is in third place, while bunched together are the veterans John Tomlinson, Glenn Norcliffe and Bob Jones. Mark my words, these bikes are not easy to ride. The back wheel feels detached from the rest of the bike. Besides that, they're metal shod, so don't do anything out of the ordinary like steering or swerving. First over the line is Scott Brown. Hard luck, John Malseed, it wasn't to be. Peter Cox is just coming in, followed by John Tomlinson, Bob Jones and Glenn Norcliffe. A unique spectacle, something to tell the grandchildren. I'm most impressed. They managed to keep themselves upright. But how does anyone riding a bike manage to balance on two wheels? To try to answer this question, we've got some old footage of some very good sports who have agreed to try and balance on a trick bicycle. All they've got to do is to ride for 10 yards for £10. It's a fun day at Booth's Hall in the year 2000, and the 10-yard bike challenge starts here. Oops, what's happening? Ah, that looks good. Nice dismount. There's something missing from this bike that stops them from keeping their balance. Take another look. Oh, hardly started. Oh, this is good. No, it's not. Actually, it's not impossible. Well done, sir. £10 for 10 yards. What's missing is the ability to turn the handlebars, because the handlebars have been locked. The secret to riding a bike is this. As soon as you feel unbalanced, you subconsciously regain it with a small tweak on the handlebars. Not many cyclists know that. So now that they could ride a bike, they wanted to go faster. And the obvious way was to have bigger wheels. Here's a photograph of a tandem with two big wheels, but it has defied all attempts to ride it. The solution they came up with was to have one big driving wheel and a small wheel. It was practical to get on and off, and it minimized the weight. The spokes of a hobby horse and velocipede are wooden, like the old cart wheels. Now, what I'm going to say next may seem a bit obvious, but bear with me. The weight of the rider passes through the forks to the hub, and the hub is supported by all the spokes between the hub and the ground. The spokes are in compression. Wooden spokes would be far too heavy for a penny farthing, so they called on metal spokes that had been patented 70 years earlier. So there they are, a full wheel of spokes. But hang on, I've got an everyday bicycle spoke here, and it collapses under compression. The whole bike is going to collapse under the weight of the rider. What's going on here? The answer is that a bicycle wheel is a suspension wheel. In the manufacture of a suspension wheel, the spoke is tensioned between the hub and the rim. In that way, the hub is continuously suspended from the wheel rim above it. The spokes are not in compression, so they don't buckle. It's beautiful, isn't it? Which reminds me, in the early years of aviation, it was all about reducing weight. So they used tightly stretched cords to spoke the landing wheels. I love that story. Oh, one more thought before the race. The handlebars on my penny farthing come almost up to my chin. And when you're perched on the top of this thing, you're very aware of the fact that if you do come off, you're going to break a bone or two. I can vouch for that. If riding a penny farthing is dangerous, racing a penny farthing is seriously dangerous. So with that cautionary thought in mind, let's go to the Knutsford Great Race, where the competitors are taking up position for the mass photograph. There we go, the Knutsford Great Race 2010, just waiting to happen. A little 1934 Austin Ulster is going to lead off the rolling start when the town crier gives the signal. They're off, and the rolling start is on its way. They don't do a racing start, it would cause mayhem. The 1934 Austin gives maximum impact to the contrasting size of a cyclist on a penny farthing. There are riders here from New Zealand, Canada, the USA, Germany, and as far afield as Alderley Edge. They're all going very gingerly as they approach the bend because it's hellishly tight and narrow into the bargain. The rolling start will continue to roll for 2 laps until they hear the starter's gun. The starter's gun is some gun. The competitors are going to hear the roar of a cannon. The gunners are waiting until the front riders have passed the first bend for the 3rd time.
Make ready! Give fire!
Josef Zimmerczek, with adrenaline pumping, has hurtled into the lead. Jamie Turner, over from New Zealand, is easing up for the bend, while Josef is racing down to Tattenmere. The race is on, and there's 3 hours to go. That's Jim Brailsford, Joff Summerfield, Andrew Lomas, and Dave Moroney. 24 solo riders have registered for the event, and 65 team riders. It may come as a surprise to you that there are penny farthing races held all over the world. But in the year 2010, this is by far the biggest. It'll be a while before the field spreads out, and in the meantime, we can get a good look at the riders. I don't believe this. It's Josef coming down like there's no tomorrow. They tell me that his first lap has taken him 1 minute 24 seconds. That's breathtaking. The Great Race is something like the London Marathon. People come for all sorts of reasons, and it's a good occasion to wear some fancy dress. Of course, in the London Marathon, the best runners get away and run at their own pace. In the Knutsford Great Race, the best riders have to slow down until they find room to pass the slower riders and the large groups. Like the marathon, there are riders who are here for the first time. The organisers ran a practice day for new riders, one of whom was Dave Riley. He's a bit of a joker, and at the practice he was talking up his chances of winning the race. But today he's not trying to win. He's putting safety first and making sure he doesn't come off. It's quite scary business for the first-timers, something that's been picked up by one of the spectators.
They pick up quite a lot of speed, don't they? At various parts of the
down there, I just don't know how they do it. I heard a couple of them at the very beginning. We came down before they'd all started, and heard a couple of them just behind me saying, "Just got to keep keep aware. I can't look scared because there's so many cameras all around me that they'll catch me looking scared on these bikes." But that corner, I mean, how the hell they do that corner?
The rider who's taken everyone's attention is Josef Zimmerczek from the Czech Republic. In 2005, he rode the 21-day Tour de France on a penny farthing. Since he was on a penny farthing, they let him start a day early. On day 20 of the race, he took a spill, broke his jaw, his nose and 7 teeth. He was helicoptered to hospital with a broken rib and a damaged shoulder, but having got there, he signed himself out. He finished the race on day 21 in a race time of 190 hours, which compares very well with 90 hours taken by the leader, Lance Armstrong. These days he rides for charity, and his t-shirt sports a Czechoslovakian charity for children with cancer. He's probably the fastest man in the world on a penny farthing and has greatly added to this spectacular Knutsford Great Race. Ten years ago, people were surprised to see a team of young lads riding a cut-down penny farthing. This year there's another team on the same bike. I can tell you the lads have taken on some task today. To make their bike go the same distance as a full-size bike, they have to do at least twice as many pedal strokes. It's exhausting. Karen had a word with them before the race.
Well, I'm going to have to get down here. Harry, who introduced you to penny farthing riding?
Well, it was Roger, and he introduced me, and I rode in the Mayday, and I've been riding in the Mayday for the last 3 years. So.
Okay, and Roger lives in Knutsford and is part of the penny farthing group of people here?
I think he's the chairman. I think he's organised it.
Okay, and so where did you get your team from for today?
Well, everyone here is from school, basically. So,
And which school is that?
the Grange School in Hertford.
Fantastic. And how long have you been cycling together?
6 months-ish.
Yes, about 6 months.
Okay, and what's the order that you ride in?
Well, I go first.
Then me.
Then me.
And then me.
Okay, and I've noticed the wheel on this bike is considerably smaller than the other competitors. Doesn't that mean that you have to cycle twice as far?
Well, it means that our legs are constantly spinning round.
But they
I suppose
go
it gives.
faster if they pedal, and they can pedal less. It means
Our legs go faster than theirs, but we still go slower.
Yeah, so don't you think the organisers need to be asked about that? Is that fair?
I reckon we should start at the front.
You should start at the front.
Yeah,
That's
like,
the Dead Files team. That's an unusual name.
Yeah, I suppose it is really. It's just my granddad's company really. He's just decided to sponsor us and we decided to go along with it. So
It was good because he's done so much work for us, helping us get the team together.
Thank him for all the work he's done, helping put it together.
Okay, that's lovely. What time's the race starting then? Have you had a practice?
we've had a couple of hours practice
This morning.
just going around the track.
And how does that feel?
It's feels.
I think it's made us more confident about riding on the bike.
Because this morning it was kind of like nerve-wracking getting up, and it's like today is the day we're going to have to do it, but going around it makes you feel just better.
More confident.
Falling off, and then we were a bit worried that we were going to fall off again. But since we've done this, we're not nervous about falling off.
Okay, great. And are there any particularly bumpy bits?
Not particularly, really.
The only problem I would say is the hill over there. You have to really, it goes, with our small wheels, they kind of pick up more speed on the pedals because they're so short, go faster and faster and faster, and it's hard to keep your feet on the pedals.
Okay. All right, well, good luck keeping the balance. Are you doing a certain number of minutes each before you swap, or how are you?
We're going to do
A couple of laps
couple of
each.
laps.
Okay.
And then we're going to swap.
Okay. Oh, well, you sound very well organised. Well, good luck today, and everybody's going to be rooting for you, being the youngest team. And yeah, we look forward to seeing how many laps you manage to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Good on you, lads. Best of luck. They were talking about coming down the hill and how the pedals want to run away with them. Poor little souls. It's almost impossible to keep pedalling. Well, there's one way around it. Hello, Hay Coulter also thinks it's a good idea, but the accolade of the day must go to Jamie Turner. He's having a rest while pedalling at the same time. Proud to be English and riding in this, his fourth Knutsford Great Race, one of the all-time favourites is Lionel Ferris.
Oh, they do! Love you! Love you!
He's famous for ice creams, boiler suits and repartee. J Wildin caught up with him first thing this morning.
You're one of the grand old men of the high wheeling.
One of the dirty old men of the high wheelers.
And well known amongst the riders.
Notorious, yes.
I've heard something about you wearing 3 suits. What's that all about?
Of course. You know, you're out in bicycle, you're out in the air, you're green, the lake. I would quite happily take my clothes off and get straight in the lake, and that's quite normal. And riding with some young women, midsummer, it came on to rain, and they took their clothes off and rode naked so that their clothes stayed dry, and then they could go home on the train. Definitely, the suit in which you were born is a very practical suit to wear. But a boiler suit, a blue engineer's boiler suit, again is thoroughly practical and very cheap. I've got a boiler suit with me today for when I finish the race, and I'll be cold, slip a bat suit on. I've even got one with bicycle repairman written on the back.
Okay. And tell me about the 3rd suit.
You know, Mark Twain said it right when he said, dying is easy, every bloody fool does it. And riders do fall down. I know riders who have fallen and died. Yes,
Wow.
on you, yes.
Okay.
And I don't want to. but there was a suit for that job.
Okay. So well, it's a beautiful day, and hopefully we're not going to have any falls of that nature.
Well, I like fallen women, and I hope we find some of those.
I think we fell for that one there.
On your bike.
Good luck with your race today, Lionel.
I need it. Thank you, Karen. Bye. Bye.
It's such a grand day today and such a contrast in comparison with what happened 10 years ago. Take a look at this clip from the year 2000 Knutsford Great Race. It's 40 minutes into the race and my God, the heavens have opened. If this is a visitation from above, then the organisers must have something to answer for. Believe it or not, we all enjoyed it. Now this year has seen a touch of controversy. I wouldn't say people have come to blows over it, but emotions have run rather high, shall we say. In past races, the penny farthings were originals from the 1880s that had been lovingly maintained over the years. This year, some modern machines are being raced. An original penny farthing, like this one of Jim Brailsford's, weighs 50 pounds. But a bike made of modern material weighs only 35 pounds, so enabling the rider to go faster, and that is the burning issue. There's 24 modern bikes here today. 10 years ago, there was only the one ridden by Geoff Summerfield. That's Jaroslav Horek, Dave Priest, Josef and Steve George, all on new bikes. Modern machines are easier to ride, faster and cheaper than originals. Here's Michael Grutzner on the subject.
I deliberately choose actually the yellow color because I wanted to show people this is a modern bike. I had a modern bike with modern color and it works absolutely fabulous. If I'm on this long distance ride like we did down from Preston to Bewley in 2007, people on the road recognize it as, oh, so they still make them, and this is good. So because I don't want to fake it, I want to say it's a new bike and have my fun with it.
In this scene, only Jim Brailsford's bike was built in the 1800s. And at the next Knutsford Great Race, the traditionists will probably have to accept a field entirely composed of modern bikes. There's an interesting trio who have flown over from America. They've purchased modern bikes made in England. In fact, they picked up the bikes just a day before the race. There's Haig Coulter, who restores old bikes. Michael Kennedy is the one with the tash, and Eric Rhodes is the one with the shades, who commutes to work on his penny farthing. Michael and Haig have set themselves a target to finish in the top half. Eric's not saying anything, and he's the one we have to watch out for. You've heard of the elixir of life. Well, someone once said it's riding along on a bicycle. John Malseed is one of the smallest, one of the fittest, and one of the best riders here.
So how old were you when you started riding the penny?
I got one when I was 18 years of age, and that makes it, I've been riding continuously since then, and that makes it 47 years.
And so your ambition with regard to penny farthing cycling?
Obviously to make the 50, yeah.
Okay, well you look like you're in fine fettle and you're going to be very able to attain that ambition.
Right.
So best of luck today and over the next 3 years and beyond.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
As a warm-up for this race, he and his long-term buddy Martin Collerman rode end to end. That's the journey from Land's End to John O'Groats. Riding a machine built in 1888, he's a joy to watch. Now, another competitor who's brushed off the years is Glenn Norcliffe, the Canadian cycle historian.
Well, I wrote a book on the history of cycling in Canada up to 1900. As you can imagine, it's a little different in Canada. For one reason, we have winters. Though some of the stories that emerge out of Canada in that period are fantastic. There was a case of a priest, a minister, who rode his bike round the miners' camps in the Klondike Gold Rush. And he got blown across the lake because the ice wouldn't hold his bike. It just slipped right across the lake. Some fantastic stories. It was minus 30, minus 40, and here he is riding around preaching to the miners' camps.
You've ridden extensively across different parts of the world. Could you tell me a couple of the most recent long-distance bike rides you've done on your penny farthing?
Oh yeah, they were great. because you get to meet buddies. This year we rode, took the train to Manningtree and then rode to Denmark on penny farthings. Great group of 6 of us from New Zealand, Australia, Canada and Ireland. That was terrific. Last year we rode actually the same start, Manningtree, and then we rode to Switzerland up the Rhine Valley. Caused a beer shortage in Germany on the way, which is quite difficult. And then later in the year I did a ride from where I live in Canada, 1,000 kilometers to Indianapolis, where they have the races, the racetrack.
Okay.
So this is this is fun.
You're clearly a very fit cyclist. Is the penny farthing your preferred means of transport, or would you routinely choose to ride another bike?
I routinely choose to actually run. I'm a runner, but my legs are worn out and biking is much less damaging to your knees and joints and ankles and so on. Penny farthing, yeah, I ride it when I can. It's, I think, my favourite because it's so quiet. It's a silent steed. There's no noise, no gears, no chains, no clatter clatter. The only thing you hear is the wind in your spokes.
Beautiful. And are there any other penny farthing enthusiasts in Canada?
We're a small group, but we're keen. And we've done something very interesting, which is actually part of this race. An old order Mennonite has made a number of hobby horses. They're copies of the one in the Science Museum in London, and the one I'm riding is one of these. He's made about a dozen of them. So from Canada we're actually recreating very good copies of hobby horses.
And how much more difficult is it to cycle a hobby horse than a penny farthing?
Well, there's no pedals on a hobby horse, you walk it, so it actually suits a runner. But,
okay.
but they're hard work because you've got a lot of weight and you're pushing, you don't get the roll of a pedal.
You're an amazingly fit man. What's the secret?
The secret is a certain liquid that the next person will tell you about that comes from Ireland.
Okay, bring on the next person. So what's the answer, Pete?
I'll sing it for you.
Okay.
It goes something like this. My bicycle is of the latest kind. It has a great big wheel in front and a little one behind. Many's the time I've mounted it and pedalled with a will. Sometimes I manage to stay on, sometimes I have a spill. The people stand and stare at me as I go whizzing past at 7 miles an hour and say, how can he go so fast? But high speeds do not worry me, nor does my journey's length, for cycling gives me exercise and Guinness gives me strength.
Brilliant. You're a stuntman.
I do a few tricks, sir.
Okay.
I'm a tricky character.
You're a tricky character, and I understand you've had some falls over your time.
Oh, millions. Dozens.
But you're still here today?
Yeah.
And what's your ambitions for this race?
Well, that I finish. I survived the 3 mile, whatever it is.
The 3 hours. And how many laps are you reckoning to do this time?
Oh, we don't reckon. We just lose count.
And how do you feel about racing today in these fantastic conditions, having survived the ordeal of the 2000 Knutsford Great Race?
Well, it looks much better than it was last year. Every road was the river road last year, so it looks grand today.
Yeah. The last time. Yeah. I know we all fall into that trap. Well, we'll look forward to seeing those. And yeah, best of luck in this, your 3rd Great Knutsford race.
Thank you.
You've probably sensed that to be a penny farthing rider, you've got to be an enthusiast or an eccentric, or both. It also helps to be a mechanic, as your local bicycle repair shops won't be much help.
It was definitely dangerously loose, wasn't
Was
it?
it bagging out?
Yeah, it was like half an inch gap. It was like rolling off the rim. This is it.
On the day of the race, running repairs are done in the pits. Here they've got a solid tyre that's trying to work itself off the rim, and they're debating how to cure it. Many riders use the pit stop to pick up refreshments. And it's where the teams change their riders from one rider to the next. Sheldon's Dairy coming in. Sheldon's Dairy going out. When it's time to come out, you'd better watch out. Don't get mown down by this lot. While we're here, you can see how to get onto a penny farthing. You scoot along with one foot on the step at the back, lift yourself up, and Bob's your uncle. There are other ways of getting on a penny farthing, like this one for example. From time to time, people get into difficulty getting off, but not Pete Matthews. He's coming in with perfect balance, well worth a round of applause. Just in passing, I should explain about the name penny farthing. It was devised by street urchins as a put-down to the very superior young bucks who raced along on the latest form of transport. As well as seeing the race from outside the track, spectators like to get inside the track, where they can get a different view of the riders and where there are other forms of entertainment. This calls for some seriously competent marshalling. There are 4 crossing points and the marshals are going to be kept continuously on the lookout for 3 hours. As far as I know, there are no casualties at the crossing points, so a huge vote of thanks to all the marshals. There are 20 teams riding today. Some are teams of 4, some are teams of 2. The team members take it in turns to ride the circuit, so there should be no more than 20 team riders on the circuit at any one time. One team that's caught the eye is that of Charlotte Barnes and Katrina Youngnickel. Charlotte is the rider wearing the skull and crossbones and the webbed crash helmet. Katrina is the one in pale blue and wears a shell helmet. It's not gone unnoticed that both of them have been hurtling around the track. They're obviously very accomplished riders. Karen had a word with them first thing this morning.
Hi, Katrina and Charlotte. You're both experienced cyclists. How long have you been riding penny farthings?
I've had my penny for about 4 years now.
And you, Charlotte?
I think about 2 years.
About 2 years. And you cycle in London, I understand?
As much as I can, really, on penny.
How often would you say you cycle around the streets of London?
Oh, well, every day on a regular bicycle, but on a penny as much as I possibly can. It's not a commuting bike, but I do commute on it from time to time.
So Londoners might see you how often? In a month?
Oh, a couple of times a week.
A couple of times a week?
Yeah, maybe.
Fantastic, okay. And are you here with a racing ambition today?
Definitely, definitely. Got to be in it to give it a go, really.
Yeah, we're not going to be hanging about. I mean, there's some fast races here, and we're going to do our very best.
You've cycled 100 miles or so on a penny previously, haven't you, Charlotte?
Yeah.
And you're hoping to do something similar in the near future?
Well, I've raced before. I raced in Avondale in Tasmania this year. There are championships that are held in Australia every year, which I would thoroughly encourage Knutsford organisers to do rather than once every decade. And they have racing that are kind of short sprints, and they also have a century ride, which I haven't done yet, the century ride, but I intend to do that next year. But Charlotte's quite inspiring to see that you can do a century ride or even more on a penny.
Okay, fantastic. And who's starting, who's doing the first leg in your team?
I'm going to start.
Okay, and how many laps are you hoping to do?
See, I don't know. The course is really interesting, given the fact it's so narrow and there are so many riders out there. And interestingly, talking to riders last night, a lot of them said that they were riders rather than racers, so it's going to be interesting to see how we form as a pack. So I don't know, it's all unexpected and exciting.
10 years ago, 100 laps was achieved in the 3 hours. What's your thoughts about that number of laps for today for yourselves?
I have not done the maths behind it, so I can't say, but we sat down and worked out that with a 700-metre course and the number of riders that are on at any one stage, you're looking about a density of 1 rider per 30 metres, which, yeah, given that my braking distance is probably not much less than half of that, that's pretty busy. So, yeah, it's going to be hard work.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, I'm certainly very excited about seeing how this particular team does today, and hope the weather's going to hold, and best of luck on this very bumpy ride.
Well, we're really hoping that more women will start riding pennies and maybe at the next Knutsford or perhaps in the Australian Championships next year there'll be many more women riding pennies.
Okay, can I catch you at the end of the race for a go on one of your bikes?
Yeah.
If we're still in one piece and our bikes are still in one piece,
you're more than
you're more than welcome to ride either of them.
Thank you, that would be fantastic. Okay, good luck.
Yes, good luck you two. I'm glad I'm not racing against you. In order to run an event like this, you have to have sponsors. There are 3 main sponsors here today, and there are 3 teams wearing their logos. There is Bentley, as in the motor car, there is Booths, as in the supermarket, and there's Bonhams, as in the international auctioneers. So many thanks to them and to all the advertisers in the official programme. Of course, spills and thrills are part and parcel of any penny farthing race. There's a spill coming up here. Ooh, that looks nasty. Andrew Robinson's been thrown off balance and has taken John Dodgin down with him. It looks bad. John Dodgin is lying there prone, and Andrew Robinson's not going to be able to continue. He's suffered fracture in both arms. Thankfully, John's getting up, and Josef's gone back to check on the state of the riders. So let's take a look at the incident in slow motion. You can see that Josef has caused the spill by taking the wrong line through the bend. Maybe something happened just before the bend, or perhaps he just lost concentration. The race marshal on the spot has formed the view that it was a case of reckless riding and therefore a red card offence. The marshal is telling Josef to go back to the pits and withdraw from the race, but Josef doesn't understand. He doesn't speak English. And having checked that both riders are back on their feet, he is on his bike and is going to ride on. We went on the spot when this accident occurred. It looks serious and that bike's in poor shape. That's Graham Smith, who's dragging himself away to collect his wits and to look at his poorly bits. The damaged bike has still got its back wheel intact and there's no broken spokes, but oh dear me, the front wheel's in a mess. Now this is in real time, and Graham says he's okay. He's going to carry on. He's even got a smile on his face. On the bend which leads to that accident, Jamslak Horek from the Czech Republic came to grief on the corner. He's obviously shed a few bits and pieces, and there's the danger he'll get into a tangle with another penny farthing. His shoulder's not too clever, but he's going to get on with it, and he'll take a painkiller when he gets round to the pits. The history of the bicycle is a welter of mechanical inventions, but there's a social history to the penny farthing which is fascinating. I'll just give you a few snippets which we recorded earlier in the Penny Farthing Museum on King Street. When you bought a penny farthing, you went into the shop and they took your inside leg measurement. That determined the diameter of the wheel that you could drive. With the advent of the penny farthing, the working man could now get out into the country. He could only previously go by train. Historically, Knutsford was part of the penny farthing scene because the Manchester Cycling Club and the Anfield Cycling Club, shown here, both used to do the round trip to Knutsford, taking afternoon tea on a Sunday. They wore a uniform, much to the alarm of the local people who regarded them as invaders or some sort of militia. The Anfield Club is still active, and it's particularly interesting because it was the same club as the football club. The bicycle club was bigger than the football club in those days, but the football team changed their name to the Liverpool Football Club, and they still play on the same patch of ground today. The first president of the Liverpool Football Club has a great-grandson here today. The driving force behind the Knutsford Great Race, Glyn Stockdale. Glyn, I really must thank you and your committee on behalf of the spectators, the riders and ShelterBOX for staging this wonderful event.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to the next one.
And so will I. And don't forget, 2020. In the 1880s, the people interested in riding penny farthings were the young men, bursting with enthusiasm and adventure. The future was theirs and they were going to flaunt it. The horse riding fraternity worked themselves up into a frenzy over these young bucks on their new contraptions, and the courts were inundated with the injured and the aggrieved. One notorious incident stood out, and here with their version of this story is Roger Turner and Nick Clayton.
The kings of the road were the coach drivers.
Yeah, but the cycle clubs were going to prove otherwise.
Both parties recognised each other as the enemy.
The notorious incident involved occurred when the Trafalgar Bicycle Club was intent on overtaking the St Albans coach.
Harry Cracknell was the guard on the top of the coach. He was armed with an iron ball connected with a long rope. As the cyclist overtook, Harry launched the missile at the machine of Mr G, who was the secretary of the cycle club.
Mr G was then lashed over the shoulders by the driver of the coach, Mr Parsons.
Mr Mitchell was following Mr G. The poor fellow got caught by the rope and got thrown to the ground with great violence. He was dragged along until the rope broke.
At the Edgware Petty Sessions, Mr G admitted he'd sworn at the driver who wouldn't let him pass.
The coach driver felt he was justified in taking preventive measures. He claimed that he'd had trouble in the past with cyclists frightening his horses.
The magistrate did not think this was a good enough reason for assaulting strangers. Cracknell was fined £35.
Parsons was fined £32.
Phew, what a story. As well as vying with coaches, the riders also vied with each other. They raced these machines. In fact, the elite turned professional. There are no professionals here today, but there are some serious riders. There's Dave Preece, Jamie Turner on the right and John Musson on the left, Jim Brailsford, Adrian Lomas and Steve George. The number of spectators who have come along to watch these riders has exceeded all expectations. Karen has been along to have a word with one or two of them.
Hi, how far have you travelled to come to the event today?
I've come from Cardiff today. It's all the way from South Wales.
Okay, and what brought you here?
My friend Jamie is racing today, and he did it 10 years ago. So he's come back all the way from New Zealand to do it again today.
Okay, and have you seen penny farthing riders previous to today?
No, I'd never even thought about anybody riding penny farthings in modern day times, really. So it's quite novel to see everybody.
Okay, and what do you think of it?
Oh, it's great. It's a really lovely community event and lovely to see everybody out cheering everyone on and supporting. And
fantastic. And do you fancy having a go on one of these bikes?
I don't know. It looks quite tough. They sit quite high up, and I think if you wobbled, you'd have a long way to fall.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm quite happy as a spectator, enjoying the day out.
Okay, excellent. All right, well, enjoy the rest of the day, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, I think that lady summed up a lot of people's sentiments. In the year 2000 race, Geoff Summerfield was the only competitor riding a modern bike, which he made himself. Here's a clip of him riding it in that race.
I'm sure you've noticed a rider who's been dubbed as the Red Baron. In real life, he is Geoff Summerfield, and we've slowed him down to get a good look at the bike, which he's made himself. It's almost a safety bike, with a saddle set so far back. He's riding from Land's End to John O'Groats, and he's popped into Knutsford just by way of an interlude.
This year he's sporting a pith helmet. There's a very good reason for that. His hero is Thomas Stevens, who set out in 1884 to ride around the world on a penny farthing. Thomas Stevens left Liverpool escorted by members of the Anfield Club, rode through Knutsford and then down to the south coast. In these scenes from the Stevens Journal, he always wears his pith helmet. Oops, he's upset the bargees on the canal. A little local difficulty with a stone-throwing mob. He needs a bath now and again. Home cooking under the midnight sky. His world trip took him 18 months. In 2006, Geoff set out to emulate the journey. Geoff went from England to Holland, then Germany, the Czech Republic, Slovenia, Hungary, Serbia, Macedonia, Greece, Turkey, a plane to Australia, a plane to New Zealand, a plane to China and on to Tibet. Here's a photograph of him in Nepal with Everest in the background. Next, on to India, a plane to Thailand, on to Cambodia, back to Thailand, and then Malaysia. A plane to San Francisco and a ride to Canada. A plane to Lisbon, ride up through Spain, France and home to England. He did it on a budget of £5 a day plus airfares. What can I say? I'm exhausted just reading the list. Great stuff, Joff.
How far have you come today?
From Manchester.
And have you been here before?
No, but a friend of ours has, 10 years ago, and I'd read about it in a magazine as well, so that's why we decided to come.
Okay, lovely. And what have you thought of the event today?
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. But people are mad, aren't they? They're absolutely mad. They must be so tired. And the average age of the average rider is 50 plus. And they put me to shame. They really do put me to shame.
Do you cycle?
At all? No, we did last weekend. Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And would you fancy having a go on one of these bikes?
Yes.
You would?
I would. I'd be scared. I don't know how they operate. I know there's a little step up and you have to do it at a running pace.
Yeah.
And there's a technique, but I don't know the technique. So.
But you wouldn't mind learning it?
I wouldn't mind learning it. No.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Have you come from Manchester as well today?
Yes.
And how did you hear about the event?
My wife told me, because I'm not into joined up reading. You see.
Okay, all right. And what do you think of the bikes?
Oh, quite amazing, aren't they? So there are all sorts of different varieties of penny farthing. I hadn't realised that there's sort of bigger, different sizes of them.
Yep. And are you aware of the charity that's benefiting from today's event?
I know that a charity is benefiting, but I'm not sure which one.
ShelterBOX. Have you heard of ShelterBOX?
Is that part of Shelter?
It's similar in that it helps homeless people, but they're homeless people who've been made homeless by natural disasters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, or by man-made disasters. Yeah.
Like Pakistan.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I mean, it's a very good turnout today for it, and I hope the charity does well out of it all.
Yeah, super. Yeah. Do you fancy having a go on one of these bikes?
No.
A definite no.
That's a definite no.
Despite headline news about disasters in Pakistan and Haiti, ShelterBOX is not a household name. The gentleman in the interview hadn't heard of it. And in fact, most people I speak to haven't heard of it either. One of the teams taking part has been spreading the word. Let's take a look at them. I know you'll have spotted two riders in late Victorian rig-out. They are Team Spend a Penny. They hadn't ridden a penny farthing until they signed up for the Knutsford Great Race, and they've been learning to ride on the country lanes of Exmoor and Somerset. This is John Dodgin, and this is Neil Musson. They've raised a considerable sum of money for ShelterBOX, and here they are talking about what they have done so far.
Team Spend a Penny, that's a very unusual name.
It is an unusual name, and we took some time to decide. We've raised a lot of money already. We've raised £2,500 for ShelterBOX. It's called Spend a Penny. It's a penny farthing, and we're raising money. Simple as that. Nothing to do with lavatories.
Fantastic. You've been involved with ShelterBOX previously. Could you tell me something about this charity?
Yeah, ShelterBOX provides boxes with everything you need to survive for 6 months in a natural disaster. They operate all across the world, most recently in Haiti and in Pakistan with the floods. And each box costs about £500 to fund, but as I say, it can keep a family of, I think it's 6 alive for 6 months. So we've been fortunate enough to raise £2,500 so far, which is 5 boxes. So you can see, obviously, with the scale of the disasters happening around the world, a lot of money and awareness needs to be raised for the amount of boxes that are needed.
What other charity events have you done previous to the penny farthing race?
Okay, we've appeared at many events. We went to Bewley National Motor Museum, we went to their auto jumble there and we set up a stand there, we set up the tent. We've done various village fetes and local events. We've raised most money, I think, through our website where we've advertised the cause and what we're doing, and people have been very generous in supporting us.
Okay. And how have you enjoyed preparing for this race? I've seen you on YouTube.
It's been great fun actually. I've been a competitive cyclist for 20 years. I got involved with, it was initially Neil's idea and I got involved because of the challenge really, and it was like learning to ride a bike all over again. And we've set ourselves various challenges along the way to make sure we're ready for today, including riding over Exmoor, up in Lancaster as well. So we've tried to be as challenged as possible, but it's been a very steep learning curve.
Okay. And you've had a few practices around the track. How does it feel?
Well, you know, this is not only the first time that we've ridden with other penny farthings, it's the first time we've ever even seen them being ridden. We're very confident with this machine, but we've never been involved with other people. So the challenge today is everyone else.
You haven't been riding long. Is it foolhardy or adventurous?
Well, when I was looking for somebody to join me in this venture, I said I needed someone who was stupid, fit, and with a good sense of humour. And I found John.
Okay.
And I certainly fit the bill, and it's, I would say it was foolhardy and adventurous. It's a fine mix.
Okay, splendid. Okay, well, best of luck in the ride, and you take care on those corners.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cheers, bye.
Thank you.
Well, many thanks to them, and many thanks as well to all those taking part today. A rider who's almost gone unnoticed is Jim Brailsford in the dark blue. He won the race in the year 2000, but he hasn't ridden for 7 years. And at that meeting he came off and broke 2 ribs, had 7 stitches in his forehead and a broken nose. Interestingly, Josef is riding in the slipstream of Jim Brailsford. Josef has changed tactic. He's no longer trying to set a course record, he's just aiming to come in ahead of everyone else, and it's Jim Brailsford that he's keeping tabs on. To my mind, these pictures capture the essential spirit of the penny farthing. They say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, if anyone cannot see the beauty in these pictures, I would like to meet them. To the poetry and motion, we must also add the ingenuity of mechanical engineering, the leverage, the challenge to stability, and the glorious feeling which comes with momentum and energy. Which leads me to a graphic from Scientific American. It's about the energy expended to travel over a kilometre. The scale on the left is the energy required to move the body weight over a kilometre. So the poor little mouse would use the most energy, then the bee, then the hummingbird. The graph shows that a person walking is very efficient, but the most efficient is the cyclist. In fact, 800 times more efficient than the mouse. So there you have it. So next time you're battling uphill into the wind, at least you could console yourself with the thought that you're expending less energy than any of the others. Born to ride a bicycle is the tricky character from Ireland, Pete Matthews. He's entertained onlookers for half a century, and he makes these stunts look easy enough. But a word of warning, don't try them yourself. You may think this illustration is rather fanciful. Not a bit of it. Pete Matthews can do it standing on his head, if you see what I mean. Well, time's nearly up. Less than 2 minutes to go. Time to put in a finishing burst and perhaps add 1 more lap to your total. Some could ride on ad infinitum. Some can't wait to get off. When the gun goes, the count on every rider will stop, and we can turn to the serious business of laps completed. There it goes. Time's up on the Knutsford Great Race 2010. As they come round, I'll give you the top 10 finishers. Josef would have been the winner with 107 laps, but unfortunately he's been disqualified. Eric Rhodes is 9th with 95 laps. The team of Charlotte and Katrina are 2nd with 106 laps. Sheldon's Dairy team are 6th with 95. End-to-ender Martin Kalaman is 10th equal with 94th. Dave Priest, tucked in on the inside with red sleeves, is 5th with 97. And alongside him is Team Spend a Penny, 6th with 95. That's Adrian Lomas, 6th equal with 95 laps. Jamie Turner, 4th with 100. Two who shot through earlier were Steve George in the blue with 101, taking third place, and John Malseed in black, taking 10th with 94. And there's Jim Brailsford, who's first with 107. The boys' team of George, Harry, Max and Richard have done unbelievably well at 80 laps. They've done 1.6 pedal strokes more than Jim Brailsford. Just out of interest, 3 riders were 12th equal. The veteran Merlin Evans in yellow and red did 91. The American Hay Coulter, who hoped to be in the top half, was 12th out of 39. And his near neighbour Michael Kennedy also did 91. And so it's time to move to the riders' enclosure, where they return the transponders which counted their laps and where they receive their medals. First prize for the hobby horse race goes to Martin Grutzner. First prize for winning the Velocipede race is Scott Brown. He's tickled pink that for one lap round Knutsford Moor he becomes world champion. First prize for the fastest penny farthing team is Charlotte and Katrina.
Okay guys, put the programme, that's it, lovely, big smile. Straight down the lens, straight down here, lovely.
And the first prize for winning the Knutsford Great Race is Jim Brailsford.
Okay, big smile guys, that's lovely.
It's his second time in a row.
Get baby's face in there, that's great. Oh, it's going.
Outside, the riders are doing their interviews with a number of different programme makers. Others from the penny farthing fraternity are having the last word. With their modern bikes, which they brought yesterday, the Americans are off and will fly home tomorrow. And the crowds are melting away while the organisers tidy up. So that's it. Time to go home. And, dare I say it, see you again in 10 years' time in 2020.